Okay, it's 4 o'clock, and welcome to today's webinar. Our speaker today is Ty Carver. Ty has nearly 30 years of recruiting, HR management, sales, and leadership experience, including the last 7 specific to the broadcast media industry. Ty's topic today is addressing the recruiting challenges with a changing media industry. And man, is it changing. So without further ado, here's Ty Carver.
Thank you, Dan. And I'd like to thank the Michigan Association of Broadcasters for giving me the opportunity to present today. As Dan said, today's slide deck is going to be addressing the media recruiting challenge. And a bit about myself. Again, my name is Ty Carver. I'm based out of Tampa, Florida, where any second now a thunderstorm's getting ready to come down on top of us. So if you hear some loud booms, I apologize. But as Dan mentioned, 30 years of recruiting experience. I started when I was 12 years old, right? Former director of recruiting for Raycom Media. So I led a large recruiting team, built that from scratch. We supported a 65 station group and Raycom Sports, et cetera. For the last 2 years, I started my own media recruiting firm, Carver Talent. So I'm the founder, CEO of Carver Talent, a media management recruiting firm, supporting C-suite corporate executives within the media industry, but also all department head level recruiting for positions within television stations, typically general manager, sales, content management, chief engineers. I hear they're tough to find anymore. Any department head level position, and also do recruitment training, either Zoom or on site. So keep me in mind for that as well. So we're gonna jump right in. I actually put together 2 trainings, and I've timed it a couple of times, and it's running right against an hour, so 55 minutes-ish. One is addressing the challenges, what we're seeing out there today, and then how to hunt or source candidates in today's changing media environment. The other 30 minutes is more, once you get the candidates in your pipeline, how do you effectively interview them, and what are some of the tricks there, and maybe some of the pitfalls that you can run into. So it's kind of a 2-part series, and I'm gonna run through this very quickly. I like more interactive sessions typically, but today, if you have any questions, I would ask that you jot those down. Take my email address at the end of the presentation, send those to me, and I'll answer every question or everybody that reaches out, I promise. I'll also check the chat box throughout the presentation to see if there are any questions as I go. But again, I'm going to be moving at a pretty fast pace, so thank you all. So I contend in 30 years of doing this and almost 10 in media, that today, effectively recruiting into media may be the most difficult in the history of our industry. So we're going to talk about some of these challenges, what I'm seeing, what I've heard from others of what they're seeing, and then hopefully give you some real world tips and tricks to help you hunt, hire, and retain top talent. What are some of our challenges today? These aren't shocking to you. You all are living this day in and day out. Acquisitions, non-competes and contracts, a changing industry, right? And a changing workforce. Not only a changing workforce, but how media is consumed in general. And then just for fun, let's throw in a global pandemic for the last 1.5 years that we're slowly coming out of. With that have been some drastic unemployment fluctuations, downsizings. We're going to talk about that. And then I'm seeing, and you all are seeing, some tough to fill positions out there, including sales account executives, producer and EP openings. And I'm telling you right now, if you haven't hunted for an engineer lately, that's a tough find. And we're going to talk about some tricks. So let's talk about these kind of one-on-one, starting with acquisitions. I mean, it's all converging, right? It seems, at least it seems so. We have 3 mega groups out there right now. They're going to be more, maybe. But what is that doing to us? It's giving us fewer options for our candidates. And our candidates and everybody out there is a little bit nervous right now. I hear it on every call. You all are probably hearing it when you talk to candidates and even internally within your stations and groups. With some of these mega groups, I mean, there's perception versus reality, right? We all hear the kind of the good, bad, and ugly about everybody, but it gives us fewer choices. And some of these non-competes are hampering our recruiting efforts, because not only are some of these non-competes hampering these candidates working in market, but some of these mega groups are also making it to where these people cannot go in other markets where they do business. So effectively cutting off about a half to a third of the country for these candidates to be able to work. I mean, when you think of these acquisitions, I mean, you had Lynn, Belo, to MediaGen, to Nexstar, Tribune to Nexstar, Raycom to Gray, which was a surprise to many of us, Quincy to Gray, Meredith now to Gray, Cox to Apollo, Ion to Scripps, Journal to Scripps. I mean, just everybody's heads are spinning. So it has had an effect on our industry, and I think there's more to come. So hang on for the ride, folks. You know, I bring this up not to discriminate or not to completely classify folks, but in general, I'm seeing some generation gaps in recruiting that are telling in our industry today. And we're going to address these because I think it's important. You know, baby boomers are aged 57 to 75 in general right now. Gen X and Zennials, 36 to 56. Millennials, Gen Y, Gen X, 27 to 41. And then guess what? The next up and coming generation, iGen or Gen Z, 9 years old to 26 years old, which scares me to death, right? That now 22 to 26-year-olds that were born, you know, 95 to year 2000 are now entering the workforce. And we're going to talk about some of these differences. Again, here's some of the generation names, birth dates, the youngest age today, and the oldest age today. You probably don't have too many of the silent generation at your station, 76 to 96. Baby boomers, 57 to 75 again, part of your workforce. Gen X and Zennials, I'm lumping them together, but they probably make up 40 to 50% of your workforce, perhaps. Millennials, Gen Y, Gen X, 27 to 41 are taking up about the other 40 to 50%. And then again, the next up and coming working generation, iGen and Gen Z. What are we seeing from these different generations? I mean, obviously a changing audience. Think about it when, you know, I'm a Gen Xer, I'm 52 years old. I don't mind telling you all that. But I remember a time where television was 3 channels and then 4 before cable, before certainly all the streaming options and Netflix, et cetera. I remember a time before internet and email and cell phones. So did boomers. You remember how we consume media, typically newspaper, radio, and then the family gathering around the TV for the evening news. Not so much today with millennials, Gen Y, Gen X, and certainly not with iGen and Gen Z. So not only is media being consumed differently, and we all know this, I'm seeing a more risk-adverse relocation behavioral patterns when it comes to these different generations. It seems the boomers and Gen Xers, and I classify us together, were maybe more tuned or more risk-adverse to do what we call the media career advancement game, where you go up in title and down in job market. And we all know that game, and many of you have played that over the year to grow your career. So boomers, Gen X, and Zennials, I think, have been more in tune or more apt to do that. I'm drawing the line with Zennials, kind of that 36 to 41-ish age range, where we're starting to see some differences there. These folks are less wanting to go to other parts of the country to, again, get promoted, but maybe go down in title or go down in market size in maybe a not so desirable market. Millennials, Gen Y, Gen X, the 27 to 41, I'm seeing a lot more of that. And then the next generation, iGen and Gen Z, kind of the right out of college, 22 to 25-ish, even more of a resistance to playing that career advancement game within media. So what does that do for us as an industry, as folks are less apt to relocate, especially during a global pandemic, where everybody's comfortable where they are. They have their family, their friends, their daycare, their comfort zone. And relocation today in our industry, I think or the lack of relocation today is changing our industry and our recruiting habits. So this begs the question, I mean, is local TV today where newspaper was 10 to 15 years ago? I don't know. I mean, some say yes, some say no, some say, you know, with digital and streaming and everything else that we're still strong. And yes, you know, perhaps, but it is definitely a changing industry, as we all know. Again, throw in a global pandemic where folks are less likely to relocate. Again, they're in their safe zone. I tell you, over the last year, and especially over the last 6 months, I've interviewed more people who have answered, my calls, or when I reach out to them, they answer me and they say, "Hey, Ty, thanks for reaching out, but you know what? I'm done with the industry. I'm going to PR, communications, whatever, but I'm getting out of the industry." And that's at a pretty alarming number right now, in my opinion, with what I'm seeing compared to, even a year or two ago. What's bringing that on? I think many things. One, the pandemic, but also, we've been in a really tough news cycle here lately with bad news fatigue, with COVID, with the political environment has had an effect. And again, with that, less likely to relocate within our industry to get more money and promotional opportunities. It is changing our industry. With the pandemic and everything else going on, I'm seeing unemployment fluctuation and downsizing, and we're going to take a look at that as well. So back in the early 2000s, we hovered somewhere between the 4 to 6% unemployment range. You see in 2008, when the housing bubble burst, it spiked up to 10%. And at that time, we were all like, whoa, that's a lot. Slow decline over the years up until, fairly recently before the pandemic, we were dipped below 4% unemployment. We were nearing virtually full employment for those that wanted to work. And then the pandemic hit, and look what happened. Skyrocketed. 14, 15% unemployment rates, which have since leveled off somewhere just under or around 6%. But it displaced a lot of people out there, including our industry. And what that did, and with the downsizing as a result, it put a lot of people out in the workforce, some good and some bad. And sorting through those folks is a challenge, again, in today's times. So how do we address some of these challenges? I'm saying today, proactive recruiting versus what a lot of you do, which is posting and praying. You have to enter this into your recruiting arsenal. You can't just sit back and post a job and then hope people come to you anymore. You absolutely have to have a hunter mentality and develop a candidate pipeline for your station and your jobs. And to do that, you need relationship building and then keeping in touch with those relationships. That takes employer branding and marketing. You need a solid process under that with the interviewing, which is why I included this next 30 minutes along with the hunting and sourcing candidates. And then you absolutely have to develop from within, because if you're not developing your folks in today's really tough relocation environment, you're not only going to lose those folks, but you're going to have job openings for a long time. So long story short, you need to start thinking like we do as recruiters, as trained hunters, as trained relationship builders. There's two different types of candidates out there, basically. There's active and then passive. Active candidates are looking right now. They're typically unemployed, or they're nearing the end of a contract. Perhaps they're on a performance improvement plan, or they're looking to make an immediate change. These folks are typically looking at your job postings, whether your website or if you haven't posted out to the different trades. Passive candidates are people who are not typically looking for a job, but they'll talk to you if you reach out to them. They'll consider promotional opportunities, but they're currently employed, typically pretty happy, and they're typically not looking at your job postings. So again, types of media candidates. And this picture kind of came out a little bit fuzzy, I apologize. It's a person either going up the cliff or falling down and looking to grab their fingers into a crevice on that way down. But some of these different types are the active. Some of these are very active. You all have positions that when you post it, 2 or 3 people that are going to apply to every single one of your jobs. I know I do. You have those that kind of jump around for more money, be it a list in sales or base compensation. You absolutely have market lifers. You have folks that are never going to leave your Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Auburn, Alabama, Lexington, Kentucky's. They're born and raised there. They went to school there, Roll Tide. They're not going anywhere. They're there to stay. You have the I'll wait it out crowd, especially in today's, not only the pandemic, but not wanting to move to perhaps less desirable markets. They're going to wait it out. Hey, I'm a local sales manager. My general sales manager is going to retire in 10 years. I'm going to wait them out and see where it goes. You have the I've been blown out crowd. We've all heard that phrase when a new GM or new management or a new group comes in and they want to bring in their own people. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we have the entrepreneurs, those that are building their resumes and their careers, kind of the way many of us did, back in the earlier days. But you see them building their resume, going up in job title, maybe down in market size, but kind of that zigzag up and down until they're a GM in New York City or corporate. So that's the kind of the entrepreneurials, but not serial job hoppers, the passive candidates that will take those risks to grow their careers. That's what we're looking for, to be honest, in many cases. What are some of your recruiting issues and frustrations? During my time at Raycom as a director of recruiting and talking to many of you as hiring managers, I heard quite often, my market is ... too small, undesirable, hot, cold, windy, dusty, tornadoes, hurricanes, snow, no pro sports, no theater, etc. Nobody's applying to my job postings. We don't have any internal candidates. Our interview process is horrible. It's too slow. Our applicant tracking system's horrible. So let's talk about some of these. Addressing the market, if you're in an undesirable market, and I'm not going to pick on any market. I think every market has their pros and cons. But in general, if your market is cold, too hot, too cold, too windy, too dusty, your trick is to go out and find other candidates from other too hot, cold, snowy, icy, dusty, tornadoes, hurricane markets. Think regional recruiting, especially if non-competes are common in your market. You need to think regionally. So the way I actually hunt people is I bring up Google Maps, I hone in on a market, and I look to the north, south, east, and west for other markets, and I start researching stations in those markets. And I'm going to show you a trick to find folks at those different stations for what you're looking for. But you have to think regionally maybe, because if you live in Lansing, Michigan, odds are you might not be able to pull somebody from Tampa, Florida. So I'm just throwing that out there. So what would get candidates interested? Would it be an applicant tracking system? Is it a job description? Is it a series of bullet point driven job qualifications? Maybe if it's in the right spot, but maybe not. Or is it a hiring manager reaching out and asking about career goals where you're making it all about that candidate? Maybe a story or social media post about how people in a given role tend to get promoted into leadership opportunities within your station or group. Maybe a video about your station, about a job, or etc. Social media blast from you or your team. Or I'm here to say that every market has some cool features about it, whether it's outdoors, hunting, fishing, lakes, good restaurants, college town, etc. But you have to market those like it's your job, because it is. Or maybe try this. This is a social media post while I was with Raycom, and it's out on LinkedIn. Try something like the post on the left. Is your broadcast media career stagnant? Are you looking for growth opportunities? Do you want to move up the ladder and or market size? So when I posted that, you see how many eyes with the 2,946. So in one day, I had about 3,000 sets of eyes looking at that. With your job postings, would you like 3,000 sets of eyes looking and above? Probably. So connect with people and get out there. It also gives you analytics about where these folks are from and who's looking at your post. And that's kind of interesting sometimes. Or maybe try this. If you live in a smaller market, maybe not a top 50 market, but again, every market has something cool about it. Take Huntsville, for example. I was hunting a director of sales in Huntsville. I didn't know that was the home of NASA. I always thought that was Houston. So you accentuate the positives about your market and blast it out there. For this posting, I had about 5,000 sets of eyes look at it in about a day and a half. So again, get it out there, talk about the positives. It's all about marketing. Or maybe try this. KCBD in Lubbock, Texas, part of Raycom, we were talking about they were having great difficulty hiring sales folks. This is Hugh Hardage, their general sales manager at the time, and they decided to put together a recruiting video. Now I'm saying that I don't think there's a station in the country that couldn't do something like this. Maybe not with somebody with Hugh's movie star good looks and a really good speaker, but I'm going to play this. It's about 30 seconds, and take a look at this. And again, maybe consider trying something like this within your station.
KCBD, the #1 station here in Lubbock, Texas, is looking for sales athletes. We provide you great resources and the best programming in the market. We've got the Blacklist, This Is Us, the Olympics, the Super Bowl. What more could you want? Raycom Media owns 65 stations across the country. This isn't a job, it's a career. Come join the highest performing sales team in the market with the longest running anchor team in the country. This isn't your everyday opportunity. You get to work with Lubbock's best businesses and help develop our local economy. If you're passionate with high energy and ready to succeed, we want you.
So holy smokes, right? Are you ready to run through a wall now? I would for that guy. I mean, if I saw that video out on, the station's social media channels, or even their broadcast or streaming, or, all of their employees blasting out to their social media, I mean, that's pretty powerful. Come work for the longest anchor team in the nation. We want you. We want sales athletes. Again, every station can do this, and I challenge you to do so. So what now? You've created this content, you've blasted out social media posts, you're selling your market and your station, you're not posting and praying, you're engaging warm candidates. So what I'm proposing is, don't ask for the wedding ring on the first date. Make it kind of a courtship, if you will. Let's talk, let's make it all about you. What do you want to do? What's your perfect next title, compensation, and location? And make it all about them. You're not wanting them to apply yet. You're just talking. And learn from your sales group where you're keeping sales leads warm. You want to perhaps, not convert them quickly, but keep them on the bench or keep in touch with them. Your applicant tracking system does not think this way. Your ATS is very black and white. People apply, product in, product out. So the big idea here is recruitment marketing, where you build and cultivate relationships. Sell your culture, make it a destination location. Make the best candidates out there want to work for you. So here's 5 tips on passive recruiting. How do you source and go after talent that's out there right now? It's a numbers game. The more people you connect with in the industry, the better odds you are on finding the right candidate. So use your team, use your social media department or your digital expert. Have your team, if you work in sales and you have 10 to 12 AEs, look at the math here. If they all do a couple of posts a day, you see where these numbers start adding up, and it's touching a lot of people, which is powerful. You're getting the word out there, and you're getting the word out there where their eyes are, where the candidate's eyes are, and it's social media. That's maybe LinkedIn, maybe Facebook for us older folks, evidently. When you talk to my 11-year-old, now it's Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, everything else. But get it out there, because probably every member of your team has more than 1,000 social media connections, and you see these numbers. You have to do this. Recruiting is a contact sport. Much like sales, activity creates results. So think of yourself if you're working sales in your earlier days, maybe your first sales recruiting interview, where you sat down with your general sales manager or your local sales manager. Did they say to you, hey, John, this job's easy, this sales job. All you have to do is sit at your desk, the phone's gonna ring, email's gonna come into you, you're just gonna take orders. It's so easy, right? That doesn't happen at all. It is a contact sport and activity and metrics. You have to connect with people. You have to get out there. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, etc. You have to post. There are even automated tools out there where you can post where it posts for you at certain times of the day or night. Get with your social media experts in-house and work on that. But be consistent, relevant, creative, and engage your targets. Maybe set realistic goals for you and your team on number of connections and number of daily posts. Again, getting this word out. So here's a tip to my trade, and I'm giving away some of my trade secrets and maybe putting myself out of a job. But this is some of how I do what I do. This is LinkedIn, and this is the mobile app. So on LinkedIn, in the search bar, you can literally type in anything to search for, be it a person or a company or a TV station. So if you plug in a station's call letters like KFVS, and I'm not picking on Cape Girardeau, it was the first station that popped in mind. So I put in KFVS, hit enter, so here they are. They have 1,100 followers, but you see where the blue arrow is right here. 14 connections work here or used to work here. Many stations have hundreds in this area. So when you click here, you might have anywhere from 5 to 60 pages worth of folks that have worked there. And then you start seeing some of the names and their titles: news director, GM, EP, CSD, producers. Are they hard to find right now? LSM, sales account executives. But here's the people in your market or surrounding markets. Connect with them. I think I'm connected to every one of them and maybe every one of you. If not on LinkedIn, look me up at Ty Carver and let's connect. But send them an invite to connect. And if they connect to you, that's a warm lead. And I'm going to show you what to do then. So again, it's a numbers game. If they connect with you, if they accept your invite, and be a little careful here, because if you send out too many invites, LinkedIn might put you in LinkedIn jail, where they, for some reason, some of these social media companies don't want you to connect to too many people too quickly. So they might put you in jail where you can't connect with people for a while. So kind of play that line a little bit. But if somebody responds, if they accepted that invite, send them a copy and paste LinkedIn response. And I'm going to show you an example of that real quick. With that, I get a 50% response rate. And here's that copy and paste. Hey, John, thanks for the LinkedIn connection. You have an impressive background. Let me know if you'd be interested in a quick confidential networking phone conversation, or maybe coffee and lunch sometime to talk about your career goals and to learn more about our station. Hey, you know what? We have a great team and culture, and we'd love to tell you more about it. Hope to hear from you soon. Again, with that, I get a 50% return rate. So if you send that out to, say if you get 10 connections and you send that out to all 10, 5 are going to write back, and you have a warm lead. You have a phone call, you have a lunch, you have candidates in your pipeline. You're not just posting and praying. Tip 2, everybody likes to eat, especially me during COVID. So, we're getting out of the COVID now. We're getting to where we can go back into restaurants. We take clients out to lunch. We might have met our spouse by taking them out to eat. Similar with the recruiting game and building relationships. Take them out to lunch or coffee. You do this to build a relationship, to build favorability. Same concept, same strategy, same result. Think of it as a sales job and activity. The more people you call, connect with, and meet, the more candidates you're going to be able to get into your pipeline. Your stations do some pretty cool things with digital targeted advertising. We do recruitment campaigns for clients all the time. Why not set aside part of a budget and do that for your station? Think, differently in how you're going to reach your competition. At Raycom, we did some things that are pretty aggressive. We geofenced competitor locations, or if there was some type of convention in one of our markets, we geofenced that. Or one year at NABJ, we even sponsored the Wi-Fi login page to where everybody that had to log into Wi-Fi saw our job openings. So think different. Get with your digital sales team and think differently, or your digital team. Number 4, the sniper methodology. This is pretty aggressive, but it's keeping your friends close and your competition closer. I'm here to tell you that every station should know the top guns in your market, be it sales, be it talent, be it EPs, be it whomever. So not only your market, but neighboring markets. Typically in sales, etc., we know who's making noise. We know who's killing deals. We know who's taking deals away from us. We know the next up and coming, anchor or talent in that market. So, again, reach out and talk to them. Talk and make it all about them. What's the next perfect market, title, and money that you want? And then work with your other stations. Take these people out of your market and put it maybe in a station where some of your sister, brother stations are. You're helping each other and you're forming a team of recruiters. It's aggressive as heck, yes. It hurts your competition and it helps your company. So think again, as a recruiter, it's aggressive, it's a contact sport. And number 5, the farmer methodology. If you're not home growing or thinking about home growing your own talent right now in today's kind of volatile recruiting or media industry, you're losing out on the great opportunity. If you're not developing training programs and succession plans internally, without making promises, but if you're not training your people, A, they're going to go elsewhere. But B, if you want to overcome the non-competes and the contracts and everything that's locking down everybody, or everybody that doesn't want to move to another market or your market, you got to home grow your own talent. Because I'm telling you, these millennials, Gen Y, and now iGen, they're less apt to move. So, and with these non-competes, et cetera, it does take time to cultivate this. But once you do, I mean, think about it. Close your eyes for a minute. If you're a GM and you have a news director and or DOS that are getting ready to retire, that person retires. You have an assistant news director or an LSM ready to move up into that next spot. You have backfill behind that with an EP or maybe a senior AE up into that next spot. And you backfill until you're more entry level. I'll take an entry level opening for a while versus a senior, department head all day, every day. And they're a little bit sometimes easier to backfill rather than a senior member of your team and what happens there. So think about that farmer methodology. A couple of other tricks. Once you interview people, maybe you were lucky enough to have 2 or 3 candidates you really liked. But far too often in our industry, you interview somebody, they didn't get the job, and you just let them go and forget about them. Create an Excel spreadsheet or a whiteboard or something and keep track of these folks and keep them warm. Or maybe send them to a larger market or another market within your group and say, hey, I just found a great engineer. Who doesn't need an engineer these days? Do you have any openings, GM, at whatever station closest to you or whatever market? And start thinking that way. If you're lucky enough to have a major college, university, or any university in your market, reach out to them and make friends with them. Their career services department, their athletic department, many of them have newspapers or yearbooks. They have an advertising component to that. And in some cases, like the University of Kansas, the Daily Kansan, they have a multi-million-dollar advertising budget for this. And they run it just like a lot of TV stations internally, where they have a director of sales and they have sales account executives. They know media sales, they know digital, and they're ready. And so befriend these folks. I've gone to many athletic directors and said, hey, do you have a soon-to-be graduating or recently graduated college scholarship athlete who has a sales mentality and they play nice in a sandbox? I'd like to hire that person to put them on my sales team and train them. I mean, they're college athletes, they're competitive, they have that personality and that drive. So think differently. For sales, some good places to go find people: staffing agencies or recruiting firms. High metrics, high activity. They're not afraid of talking to people and they'll get out there. Budget or enterprise rental car have really good sales training and customer service programs, as do Best Buy and Apple. I've walked into these places and just met them and picked them off, to be honest, on sales teams. Never hang up the phone without asking for referrals. You never get what you don't ask for. So good people know good people. Don't hang up the phone without asking them, hey, who else do you know that might be looking, either in this market or friends from previous markets? And again, either for your own station or farm them out or other departments. Build your candidate pipeline. So I just threw a lot at you. I'm checking my question box. I don't see anything yet. We are 33 minutes in. So I'm going to dive into this next section, which is now interviewing. And again, this is so important because you can go out and find the best candidates in the world. And if your interview process is broken, then it's going to do you no good. You're not going to land your fish, right? You're going to fumble the ball at the goal line. I can use every example here, but I'm not. So your strategy and mission of your recruiting should be to attract and sustain a diverse workforce by recruiting, hiring, developing, and retaining high-performing employees who work collaboratively to carry out the mission of your company. To do that, you have to develop industry-best systems to support your recruiting process. A typical recruiting process goes something like this: from creating the acquisition of whatever system you use, to getting it approved, to posting the job, screening the resume. Maybe you're lucky enough to have an internal corporate recruiting team. Sometimes those ladies and gentlemen know media, sometimes they don't, so beware there. Typically phone interview, Zoom or on-site interview. We're starting to get back in the office, so on-site interviews are going to become more prevalent now. et cetera, until you get to offer stage, contingent on those pre-employment checks. Have any of you ever made a bad hire? I've been doing this for 30 years, 10 in media, and I'm the first to admit, yes. I mean, when you're dealing with humans, humans sometimes do weird stuff, right? It's not a perfect art, but with the right systems and processes and some of these tips, you're going to be less apt to make a poor hire than making a good hire. But let's look at what happens if you make a bad hire. Recruitment costs, lost time spent interviewing, low morale, because guess what? Somebody's going to have to pick up the slack, either you or that team. Lost customers maybe, additional time to train. And last but not least, if you've been lucky enough to avoid a lawsuit from bad hiring decisions or processes, not all are. And some of these lawsuits are very costly. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later during this portion. Great interviewing skills yields top quality talent, elevates team morale and performance, but it does require practice. So what should every interview include? And we're going to get really basic here, and this is super common sense. But what I found in the interview process, it's becoming a little bit of a lost art, and some common sense things are falling through the cracks. So I just want to bring this up, and we're going to go over it really quickly. I mean, of course, you need a candidate, but do they know your proper address, like where to go, which building, how to get to you, who to ask for once we start bringing people back on site? Do they have a job description or an agenda, whether it's a Zoom interview and or on site? Do they know who they're talking to and their titles? Do they have that job description? Do your interviewers know the agenda? And are they going to be on time? And are they going to stick to the schedule? Have you put out the resume, interview questions, notes, and preparation, or you're working with your business office manager to do that? If you bring them on site, do you have a place to interview them? I've seen some of your all's offices. I would not interview some candidates in those offices. So find somewhere that's not cluttered, not too hot, not too cold. Offer them a bottle of water. And for God's sake, offer them a bathroom break. If you get them in and run them the gauntlet through your station to every department head, or if they go into corporate to the Glass Palace and talk to every VP, I've talked to candidates at the end of the day and they're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted and I never got a bathroom break or a drink of water. So treat them like you're inviting them into your home. You have one chance to make a positive first impression. Okay, the interview process in general goes something like this. Preparing for the interview, building rapport with the candidate. We're going to talk about that. Danger, danger, danger here. The interviewer asks questions, the candidate asks questions, and then we close. And we're going to touch these at each step. Preparing for the interview. Identify your interview questions based on the competencies required of the job. It keeps you on track. It helps you hunt and hire and interview the perfect candidate for you. And you should have a job description. And within that job description, you should have basic competencies, be it technical or behavioral. Technical competencies are skill sets. They're black and white. They're yes or no. You got them or you don't. College degree, 5 years of broadcast engineering experience, expertise with Ross Overdrive, whatever the case. Behavioral competencies are a little bit harder to get to. It's more of the soft skills or cultural fit. So I'm going to give you some tips on interviewing for more of those behavioral competencies. Have you ever sat down in an interview and it was quite apparent that the person interviewing you just picked up your resume and never heard of you or looked at your resume in advance? How did that make you feel as a candidate, right? Probably not the best. So don't be that interviewer when you have somebody come in and you interview them. Actually look at the resume, be prepared in advance. That's going to make the interview go much better. Behavioral interview style has been out there for a while, but not a lot of television stations are using it. I'm suggesting you incorporate some of what I'm showing you right now into your interview process, because what it does is it gives you a better indicator of behaviors, and specifically past behavior typically predicts future behavior. Past success typically predicts future success, or past failures sometimes predicts future failures. Not always, but sometimes when we look at human behavior over a long period of time, and we have to make a snap decision in 30 to 60 minutes on whether or not We're going to pay this person a lot of money and bring them into our station. So you need some tips and tricks to do that. So a trick here is go for the STAR answer, and that stands for the situation or task, the specific action your candidate took, and the result. So you want that story from a candidate on these behaviors you're looking to hire for your station. No woulda, coulda, shouldas, no hypotheticals, no I should have done that, but what specifically did they do? And more importantly, what was the result? When you interview enough people over time, the behavioral interview style is much harder to blow smoke and fake your way through than just asking somebody something like, hey, are you a team player or good with project management? Of course, every candidate out there is going to say, go team, rah, rah, I'm a great team player, that's my strength. Versus, hey, John, tell me about a time you worked on a project or initiative. Maybe it wasn't delivering the desired result. What steps did you take to identify the issues and readjust? Maybe to put the train back on the tracks, and what was the result? Or maybe simply describe a time you were on a project or a team. What did you do specifically, and what was the best thing that team came up with? So again, behavioral questions, real world examples. No woulda, coulda, shoulda. Okay, these next 2 or 3 slides are very busy. I'm going to let you read through these. I'm throwing some behavioral interview question ideas at you. You can look these up online under behavioral interview questions that are out there and probably find these. If you cannot, email me. I'm going to have my contact info up at the last slide, and I'll send you a brochure that I have with literally dozens, if not 100 of these types of questions. If these will help you, I'm willing to help you out. But look at some of these. Tell me about a time you had to communicate under difficult circumstances. What did you do and say, and what was the outcome? Versus, hey, are you good with communication skills? Again, you're looking to dig into past behaviors. And Tabitha, I just got your question. I typically do not share this, but again, if you want to reach out to me, I'm going to have my email address at the end. Please do so, and I'm willing to share, some of these questions and or tricks or tips to you. But I typically don't send it out as a package. But thank you for the question. Here's some more interview questions. If you're in sales, the last one here, contrast a sale that you made with a sale that you lost. What did you do differently in these 2 situations? What did you learn? Communication skills or dealing with internal or external clients. Look at the first question. Describe a stressful interaction you've had with a customer or coworker. Describe what you did and said. Did you get the reaction or outcome you expected? What was the result? So again, you're going after these behaviors and that STAR answer. The situation or task they found, the specific action they took, and what was the result. If you're a sales hiring manager and you're hiring for AEs, hey AE, walk me through your book of business for last year and year to date. Maybe not during a global pandemic, but maybe we go back a couple of years. How did you finish each quarter? And where are you year to date against your target? What was the breakdown of your business? New, local, direct, digital, transactional, etc. If your candidate cannot intelligently discuss their book of business, or if they're full of excuses, or if they've never hit their targets, again, past behavior predicting future behavior, I don't know if that's the best candidate for you. Have they consistently hit targets? I don't know. Dig in and find out. So let's talk about rapport. It's important in the interview process because you want the candidate to feel comfortable with you and to relax a little bit. But how do you do that? And what don't you do? Because I'm telling you, right here is where more lawsuits happen and stuff happens than anywhere else in the interview process. I talk to thousands in the industry. I have 24,000 LinkedIn connections in media. I start almost every conversation with, hey, John, how's beautiful Detroit, Michigan today? It kind of breaks the ice. We're going to talk about the weather or something like that to kind of break the ice a little bit before jumping in. That's the way I build rapport. It's kind of hokey, I don't know, but it keeps me out of trouble. And you want to keep out of trouble when you do what we do in recruiting. If they're coming into your office, hey, did you have any trouble finding our office? By the way, this is a good tool to see if they are prepared. They should have probably drove to your station or office the night before and found where you are, and maybe you see if they did that. Hey, what about that game last night? Nice weather we're having, except for Tampa, Florida, where it is pouring down rain right now. But again, you keep it generic. And this is so hard for our industry because you guys and gals like to know. You want to dig and probe and get to know, and you want to like them, and you want them to like you. That's the nature of who many of us are in the industry. And I'm telling you, sometimes this gets us in trouble. And why? It's a danger zone, because be careful what you ask for. If you ask a candidate, so tell me about yourself. What do you like to do for fun on the weekends or with the family? Or tell me about your family. Again, be careful what you ask for, because you might get it. You know, humans are interesting sometimes, and sometimes humans tell you and do things that you never thought they would do. An example here that cost a company millions, and it was actually a colleague of mine at one time, a really good recruiter. And what she did during an interview, and it was for a news management position, she was interviewing a news management person, and working weekends was a requirement of the job. So during the interview, she said, so tell me about yourself. What do you like to do on the weekends? The candidate said, well, hey, I belong to this religious organization, and on the weekend, we do this. So my candidate, instead of using the safe statement that I'm getting ready to show you that will keep you out of trouble, my very smart and very nice colleague, and it wasn't done to, for anything else, and she's just a really great person, she jumped down the rabbit hole with this candidate and said, hey, that's interesting. I've never met somebody in that religious group. Tell me more about it. And the candidate did, and they went way down the rabbit hole. They did not hire that candidate. That candidate sued them and won a lot of money. So just be careful what you ask for. I'm telling you, when we can dispute this, or you can debate it with me, but when we talk about being more legally defensible in the court of law, when you have to, if you get sued and you're now on a witness chair and you raise your right hand, so help me God, to tell the truth or the whole truth, you're going to be much better off if you listen to me here. Conducting the actual interview, you're going to want to ask each candidate the same competency-based questions for the position. There, I'll say it again. Ask each candidate the same questions. Have those questions prepared. Take notes on your questions form. It keeps everything straight, because the more people you interview, it all starts running together. It also, again, makes you more legally defensible in the court of law if you ever get sued, because you're going to write down answers. If the candidate does come up with something out of left field, you're going to document that, you're going to document your response, and you're going to be more legally defensible in the court of law. So help me God. Danger, danger, danger. Do not ask this of any of your candidates. And this is common sense, you would think, but I tell you, attorneys are in business for a reason. Labor law attorneys are in reason, and they make a lot of money for a reason. And that's because interviewers don't always get training. And if you have people interviewing within your station that have never been trained, you literally have a loaded gun sitting in your station ready for a lawsuit. And I don't say this to scare you. I'm saying this to educate and to inform you. But do not ask any of these: race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, genetic information. There's more to the list. I didn't add them all. Ask your business HR or business office manager or your corporate HR, but just in general, stay away from these. If you want to take a picture of this, or if you want to email me, I can send this to you, but here's an approximate interview schedule for you to follow. I'm saying that if you're interviewing any manager or department head, if you're not spending an hour with them, you're doing a disservice to your process and that candidate, and you might make a bad hire. So think of it as, okay, this is 60 minutes. This is an hour interview. If it's a half hour, this goes 5, 20, 5 for these 3 different steps. Step 1, greeting. Building that rapport generically, asking them, what do you know about us? What do you know about our group? What do you know about our station? Did they research you beforehand? This tells you a lot about the candidate and their interest level and their preparation level. And then fill in the blanks for whatever they didn't tell you when you asked that question. The bulk, the meat and potatoes, the 20 to 40 minutes of your interview, depending on if it's 30 or 60 minutes, is the bulk of your interview. So have the candidate give a Cliff Notes version of their work history. Have them tell you their story in their own words as it relates to their work history. What has been their proudest accomplishments for, whatever positions that are alike to the position you are interviewing them against. What was their reasons for leaving each position? Yes, each one. I want to know why they left. And if they kind of try to dodge that question a little bit, I go back to it and say, okay, what was the reason you left again? And if they use that mutual parting of the ways, no, you were probably terminated. So be careful here. Take notes. Again, yes, no, or maybe. Have that on your interview form. The final 5 or 10 minutes should be the interview close. Give the candidate an opportunity to ask questions. That's going to say a lot about your candidates and their interest level, and or is it all about them or all about them contributing to your station or group? And I'm going to show you some examples in just the next slide. Be sure to ask this. Not only tell them where they are in your interview process, but also ask where they are in their interview process. Are there other suitors out there, and where are they in those interview processes? There's nothing wrong with asking that, and that gives you a sense of urgency with the top candidates, because I'm going to repeat this later, but time kills all deals in recruiting, sales, and breaking news, but absolutely in recruiting. You can lose top candidates. Some general rules here: be careful and cautious of overly self-promotional candidates. If they've never hit their numbers, if they're unwilling to change in a really quickly changing media industry, if they're negative throughout the interview and they're quick to blame others, pick up on those behaviors and those communication traits during the interview, for God's sake, let them talk, right? Listen to them. And that's such a lost art in today's interview styles. I had a candidate one time run the gauntlet at a corporate headquarters. And at the end of the day, I asked her, how did it go when I debriefed with them? And she kind of laughed. And she said, honestly, I don't know. I didn't get much of a word in edgewise. Everybody else talked and I just kind of sat there. So don't be that interviewer during this process. And also be careful of the mutually parting of the ways. If they say that time and time again, that's a red flag, and that's a termination, perhaps. Again, in sales, ask these questions. You want to know those performance metrics. You want to know about some of their best sales. Are they a one-hit wonder, or have them go through several of their best sales? How many accounts are you currently handling? Describe a time you overcame a client objection. Pretty basic stuff, but again, it gives you insight into real-world examples of their work history. Walk me through a typical work week and your time management. What activity level do you feel like will make you successful? Describe your knowledge of CRMs if you work in sales. Walk me through your toughest sale. What steps did you take and what was the outcome? And what are your career goals? Kind of make it all about them. You want the answers to a quiz on whether or not this person is going to be a cultural fit for your team and how to manage this person potentially? Ask them, how do you like to be managed? Typically, they're going to say things like, I don't want to be micromanaged and this, that, and the other, but sit back and listen and watch their behaviors and watch how they answer the question. It's going to tell you a lot about that person. Ask this next one every single time, because if you don't, it's going to bite you eventually. Are you under a non-compete, contract, or non-solicit of any type? If they say yes, as an organization, at least at Raycom, we decided to go hands off, and that was per our general counsel advice, because it opens up lawsuits down the road, and you could also potentially interfere with the contract, which could also interfere or bring a lawsuit down the road. So be careful there and ask that every single time. And even after you ask it and they say no, follow up and say, are you sure? Because this is really important. And then ask them, what is your availability to start a new opportunity? Because one time I didn't, and they weren't available for about 6 months, and that got me in trouble with the hiring managers. So make sure you ask. Do we ask a candidate how much money they make currently? I'm telling you, no, do not ask. Or ask your corporate HR and or have them ask their general counsel. Laws are changing quickly. In some states, it is pretty illegal to ask. You can say what your compensation range is, and a way to kind of toe the line of finding out about their comp requirements is I think you can ask them their comp requirements and see if it's in line with your position. Hopefully you did that before, inviting them in or going to a Zoom interview. Hopefully that was during a phone screen. But this is the current climate. So ask your business office manager or HR person or corporate about this specific to your station, because this could cause you trouble down the line. So give the candidate an opportunity to ask questions. It says a lot about them. Again, the one on the left, the questions on the left, what can your company do for them? What if somebody asks, during that interview, hey, how much time off do I get? Or, when do I get a raise or a promotion? Or, what sort of car do I get? Or what other perks are there? Maybe red flags, but maybe not. But, look at the questions on the right. What are the key priorities for this position? What defines success for this role in terms of performance? So again, the art of listening during an interview, sit back and when you ask the candidate to ask questions, sit back and watch them and see what they ask. Have you ever felt like this during an interview? Deer in the headlights. I've been doing this for 30 years, and yes, I've had questions or candidates ask me and tell me things that I never would have expected a human to do in 30 years of doing this. I've had candidates bring their mom or dad into an interview room with them, and the parents were asking questions for them. True story. I had a candidate bring a Dairy Queen Blizzard in with them during an interview. Didn't even bring me one, and I like Dairy Queen Blizzards. And set it down and was eating it during our interview. I've had candidates bring in 2 cell phones and put them between us and answered one of them during an interview. I've had people ask the strangest questions during an interview. If this and disclose voluntarily information about them that you just kind of scratch your head and you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just said that. If that happens to you, I caution you, take a deep breath and think about your response, and don't just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. If the hair on your arm starts to stand up a little bit, or your spidey voice or your gut instinct says, danger, 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 if you've been doing this long enough, listen to that gut and take a deep breath. I don't always follow this chart. It's kind of detailed, and I'm sorry, but if you start at the left, the big box where it says, if you're asked a curveball question, is it a good question, or do you have enough information yet to know if it's relevant? Sometimes candidates ask, hey, I've heard you guys have high turnover or a tough culture. So then you have to decide, is that a good question or doesn't appear to be relative? In this case, you might have to own up to it and answer it honestly and put as positive a spin on it as you can, because, there are some stations out there, and I'm not going to mention them or the groups or markets, but have a bad rep. Or if it's a curveball question, during an interview, I actually had somebody ask me, hey, Ty, tell me about your interdepartmental dating policies. And I deer in the headlights, right? I just went, what? I said, hey, John, interesting question. What led you to ask that? And he said, well, Ty, I was terminated from my last job for an inappropriate relationship, and I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So again, as a manager, and you're sitting there and you get that curveball question, how do you react to that? Be cautious, take a breath, and be careful with the next words out of your mouth, especially if somebody voluntarily discloses some of the biggies we talked about: age, sex, religion, national origin, etc. I'm giving you a couple of safe statements as you have the deer in the headlights look. It's not bad saying this. And if you want to take a picture of this or ask me for this, shoot me an email and I'll send it over to you. But I say, and I train my hiring managers to say, you know what, John, thank you for voluntarily disclosing that information, that you're 65 years old and you're from here and you're this, that, or the other, whatever they voluntarily disclose. However, we at Raycom or wherever, we base our hiring decision solely against the technical and behavioral competencies within the job description. So help me God, your honor. Because now you want to document on your interview form what curveball question or what they voluntarily disclosed and your response. So you had that if you are sued one day. And yes, people get sued for discrimination and this, that, and the other all the time. Or there's nothing wrong with saying simply, hey, you know what, John, I don't know the answer to that, but let me get back to you with an answer by phone or email by end of business today or tomorrow. Nothing wrong with that. Don't say anything you're going to regret later, though. because it could cost you, your job, and or your company or station a lot of money. Danger, danger, danger. Closing the interview. How do you accomplish this? You don't want to make any promises, but you do want to clarify next steps. When I interview folks at Raycom, this was my last words to everybody. And if I said this to you, then I apologize, because you're going to hear it again. I say something like this: hey, John, I'd like to thank you for your time today and your interest in career opportunities with our company. Hey, with most interviews, we now go into a yes or no mode. I always get the negative out of the way first. If there's no further interest, we're going to send you an email thanking you for your time and informing you we're moving forward with others. We do ask those candidates to review future openings and apply on our website if you see anything of interest. The next positive step in our process is us reaching out for a second interview or offer contingent on successful completion of pre-employment requirements, etc. So help me God, Your Honor. This is what I said, without making any promises that you're going to regret later. But you do want to close out every interview professionally and in a manner similar to this. After the interview, again, you want to rate them, further interest or no, or maybe they're a maybe for further consideration. You know what? Far too often we bring somebody in and we run them through the gauntlet of all the department heads, and then nobody follows up. Nobody sits down and debriefs with the other interviewers. Maybe you break up some of those behavioral interview questions where somebody takes a couple of them, somebody takes a couple of more, and then you sit down and you compare and contrast your answers. So one hiring manager doesn't have to spend the entire interview firing out those behavioral questions. You are all taking that on. And you know what? In our industry and in recruiting as a whole, interviewing is becoming a lost art and not so professional anymore. And the human element to this is being affected as a result. Think about yourself if you've ever interviewed somewhere, traveled somewhere, taken time out of your day, and then you never heard back from them. I'm challenging everybody on this call to never ghost a candidate. Even if it's bad news, people want to know, yes or no. You absolutely don't want to burn a bridge in our industry. Guess what? With all the acquisitions and movements, they might be your boss one day. I said this earlier, and I'll say it again, time kills all deals. You can have the best candidate in the world, you can have them on the line, and you're not going to land them if your process takes too long. If they don't hear back from you for a week or two, you're going to lose that candidate. So you don't want to rush to judgment, but if you've got a great candidate in the pipeline, go get them, because they're hard to find. Okay, I am 2 minutes over, so I apologize for that. I wanted to be respectful of your time. Here is all my contact info. So my email address, and I'm going to leave this up, my email address, my cell phone number. I am everywhere out there, Twitter, Facebook, and we're probably LinkedIn together already. If not, send me an invite. If you have any questions from this presentation, and again, I kind of went 2 presentations in one, but I think it's so important in our industry. Hopefully I gave you a few tips and tricks to take back to your station and you can use. Hopefully it wasn't all common sense. And if you ever need recruiting assistance, keep me in mind, because again, my media search firm, we specialize in the placement of television station management folks. You only pay my firm if you hire our person. And that gives you a great opportunity to compare our best candidates against what you're seeing with your job posting. And yes, that was my shameless plug. So again, I appreciate your time. Sorry, I'm a few minutes over. And again, if you have any questions or want any part of this presentation, shoot me an email and I'll be in touch. But for now, I'm going to sign off and have a great rest of the day. Thank you all.
Ty, I'm sure our attendees will find this all helpful as they try to fill those open positions. And it's a tough thing to do these days. For everybody on the call today, we will be sending out between now and Monday a link to the recording of the webinar to all those who are registered. And that is it today from Florida and from Michigan. Have a great day. Thanks again, Ty. Bye-bye.
Bye now.